too many clubs will go, right, managers in. It's the manager's responsibility to win football games, nobody else's. And if he wins, great. And if he loses, we'll sack him and we'll get the next one. It's too easy just to go, there's a bit of a problem, let's fix it by sacking someone and bringing someone else in, because I don't think it fixes the problem that you've got. Part of the reason that we wanted to restructure the leadership team and the way that we're working was because we had Darren Moore as our manager. There's an edge to him as well, and there's a winner. The tip of everything that he does, he wants to win. And I think that's the culture that we want. We want a high-performing culture with really good people, but not nice people. We want to be known as a high-performing club that's got good people, inside it.
Matt, we are so excited to have you here. First, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem at all. Looking forward to it.
Let's start as we always like to do, with a bit of context, I guess, in and around how you've become to be the CEO of Port Vale.
I have no idea. And it's part of the, I suppose, my journey's been quite surreal in many ways, because my ambition's never been to be a chief exec of a football club, being really honest. I've loved sport, loved football. I've grown up around sport and football with, family and friends and everything else, as you do. But my career, I suppose, has all been around community and what sport and football can do in terms of changing people's lives, making a difference to people's lives. And I've always had three things that I try and do, which is work hard. So I don't believe you get anything without, working hard. Working hard, being kind, being happy. Sounds dead cheesy and dead cliche, but they're the three things that I've done. And I've tried to just match what I want to get out of work and life with the organisations I've worked for. So I've worked at two football clubs, Port Vale and Burton Albion, both community values, both local owners who are really passionate about people. And then I worked at Staffordshire FA, so local organisation and local authority before that. And I don't know, I've just tried to make good decisions, be around good people, and then I've ended up chief exec of a football club, which, don't get me wrong, I'm extremely proud and privileged sitting here being that. But it hasn't been a kind of a chosen path. It's just been something that I've been, working hard at, wanting a career in sport and football.
Is it what you thought it would be? What's the biggest surprises of being a CEO?
Might sound silly saying this, but it's the pressure from supporters. I knew it was going to be there, but the way that a number of supporters are so ingrained in 3 points on a Saturday, and that is how they judge a successful club, is it's been difficult, because obviously I'm sure we'll talk about it, we had a difficult 12 months last season where we were losing more than we're winning. And being honest, the club's in good position, financially sound, operationally. We had to change quite a bit around the football club, but we were we were a decent club. But if you listen to a number of supporters, everything from, the ticketing to the pies to the everything was wrong with the football club because we were losing. And then fast forward to where we are now, and I'm not saying we've cracked it because we're winning games, but we've suddenly that pressure from the fans kind of comes off, and that's what we are trying to be, a club that's different. But the whole relentlessness of the supporters is something that, doing things like this, I want to try and challenge some of that mindset as well, of what a football club should be and what the supporters can accept or can expect from a football club such as ours.
What did you do in those first few months then, when you were losing and you ended up getting relegated, which in football and as an executive is probably the hardest thing you'll have to handle? But that was your induction into the top job in the club.
Yeah.
How did you manage that in the first few months?
I was asked. I joined the club in January 2023 as community and CSR director. So very much with a comfortable bit for me, I suppose, growing the community programme, looking at how we can really impact local people, etc. And then Carol asked me, the conversation started about October, November time, and then I was asked to become CEO in the following January, so January of this year. Yeah, January of this year. And at that point, we weren't were in League One. We weren't doing too bad actually. Everyone at the club kind of blames me for the relegation, because as soon as I was asked to become chief exec, it suddenly all went completely wrong on the pitch. But hey ho. But it was a bit of a baptism of fire, because the results. That is when I realised that results are so important to not just a minority of fans, but to all fans. Success on the pitch, whatever that looks like. That's not being top of the league, but it is having a competitive team that is that fans can relate to, that they can connect to. Importantly, we had a team at that point. We built a team that was almost like a under 21 developmental team. Well, that's how I felt. We could pass the ball around, but it wasn't. It had no grit. We had no fight. We had no desire. Oh, that's the way it looked, and to a supporter. And Stoke-on-Trent, very working class area, Burslem, where we sit, where the club sits. People have to work extremely hard to earn the money to come and watch Port Vale. They have to be. They want to see a team that represents them, and that's how I'm a local lad myself as well, and that's how Stoke City, the other club in Stoke-on-Trent, it's how the two clubs are. The supporters are very insistent that their teams represent what Stoke-on-Trent, what Burslem, what Port Vale is all about, and that's been something that we've definitely changed over the last sort of 6 to 9 months.
You've got, it's quite a big stadium, right, as well, and it's a very historic club, one of the oldest clubs in the Football League.
It's 18,000.
It's 18,000-ish, but from a safety point, we can only open. So in terms of seats that we can sell, it's just about 16,500.
Wow.
Because of safety stuff.
And what's the attendance been like?
Well, when 2019, which is when the Shanahans took over the club, we were about 3,000-ish. So the club was just about to go into administration. There was loads of issues in and around the club, and Carol and Kevin Shanahan, they decided to put their own money in, to put the money into the football club, and
that's local owners.
Yeah, local owners. They and they're still involved in it, but they had a business called Synaptics, which was, well, it's literally next door to Vale Park. The local people, they weren't Vale fans until the business came next door to Port Vale, and Carol is so community focused, and she realised, I guess, just what Burslem and Stoke-on-Trent looked and felt like, because it is, there's some tough, people are unbelievable in Stoke-on-Trent, believe it or not, but the people are absolutely unbelievable, kind of salt of the earth type characters, and and really want to work hard and drive things, but at the same time, it is a tough area. There's a lot of people that are struggling for employment, struggling for opportunity, etc. And Carol literally thought, what's the best way of trying to inject a bit of energy, a sense of well-being, a sense of belonging to the city, and that is to go and make Port Vale successful. And that's what they did. So they bought Port Vale to ultimately try and help the city become more successful, not just Port Vale.
How much did they buy Port Vale for?
I'm not 100% sure on the actual figures, but I think it's around 5-6 million. I think.
Got you.
For the club, and
you own the stadium.
Yeah, so own the stadium. I think there's only us and Barnsley that have got the training ground on the site as well. So we've got training ground and obviously the stadium on the same site, which has its challenges. But when we've reset the whole culture over the summer, so after relegation, I believe it enabled us to connect the first team and the football departments with the wider club, because everyone's together, and new leadership team and everything that we did, and it was all about connecting everybody. Yeah. So before that, it was very much Port Vale football and Port Vale business, and then Port Vale supporters. Whereas we've done a huge piece of work on connecting the three.
I was going to say, have they been able then to stabilise the club financially? Are you now in a good position as a football club?
We are in a good position, but being honest, it's because we've got good owners. So Carol and Kevin decide that, for whatever reason, that they didn't want to be in Port Vale any longer. We are reliant on owner funding. That is the reality. And what happened last year?
Are all football clubs not?
Yeah, I think there's a couple that are getting very close to being, self-sustainable. But if I'm being honest, and this is where it comes back to the conversation of being competitive on the pitch, to be competitive on the pitch, we, as a club, when you're getting, our average attendance now about 6,000-7,000, we're not getting the numbers through the gate, and we're not, getting the numbers commercially that is going to be, at the moment anyway, going to enable us to compete at, top end of League Two. Yes. But I always said, and I have said this to supporters, if we didn't have the injection of owner funding through Carol and Kevin, we'd have a bottom third League Two budget, I would say. But the owners allow us to to really go and compete, and we can go and compete in League One with the way that the club's currently set up.
What is a competitive budget in League Two?
I think last year in League One, owners were putting in on average about 5 million
a year.
And in League Two it was about 2.5 million. And I think that, from everything I'm hearing and seeing, is only going to go one way at the moment, and that is the risk for football, I guess. And
so that's just to plug the gap between actually what we're making and what we're losing, correct?
Yeah, correct.
That's more than I thought. What does the top revenues look like?
Our revenue will be about 8 million this season, and then we'll be spending 12-ish. So our expenditure will be 12-ish, maybe a little bit more. We might bring in a little bit more money, but it's around those numbers.
How does that break up? So you've got like 8 coming in.
Yeah.
What is the biggest contributor to that?
Season ticket monies are still a very good contributor for us.
How much is season ticket money? Tickets.
Our season ticket income this year has been about $1.5 million.
Okay, so you've got $1.5 million there. Sponsorships is how much?
Sponsorships and everything, again, we're around just over $1 million.
Where else is that 8?
So retail. So we do quite well retail. So that'll be for us about 300,000-400,000, something like that. Then, as I say, the Premier League and TV monies, which we'll get through our solidarity payments and everything.
Which is, just so people have the context here, is it 80% Championship, 12% League One, 8% League Two?
Yeah.
So you have to split 8% of the total revenue between all the clubs in League Two.
Yeah.
Does that net out at about $1 million? Is it less than that? How do you actually benefit?
It'd be about $1 million.
There's been, everyone was very excited when this deal was done, and it is great in a market where it's actually much harder now to sell rights, as we're seeing across European leagues. The deal in the Championship and 1 and 2 has been fantastic at $1 billion or so. But is that enough for the clubs in your position to actually be able to sustain yourself? Yeah,
well, it's a great question, because so TV for us, so when you look at the numbers as they are at the moment, we will earn a lot more through the new deal than we would previously. We're on TV more, which is great. We don't now get the kind of appearance fee for being on the TV, and that's where, because we are going to track it, and I have sent a note into the EFL around it, because our 3 biggest games commercially, so Crewe went to a Monday night, Walsall has gone to a 12:30 on a Saturday, and Notts County, which is in February, has gone to a Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Now, those 3 games, we know from a commercial point of view, they would have been highest attendances. It's a knock-on impact on people coming to the ground, and how a 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday, we're getting people at the ground from 12:30, and it isn't just about Port Vale, and this is where it's important for us. It's the local economy, so straight away around, but the mile that you get to walk up from the train station to Vale Park and everything, the pubs, the oatcake shops, the chip shops, the news agents, everyone loses out when we get moved. And again, going back to where we are as a Stoke-on-Trent as a city, any time that we can get a few thousand people in and around Burslem spending money, not just great for Port Vale, great for everyone else.
So actually, in what looks like a really good thing to be broadcast nationally on Sky, is maybe a problematic situation at a local level, where the 8 o'clock Monday is not delivering the 3 o'clock Saturday financial impact to you as a club and the community around you?
Financial impact, I think, if I'm being honest, I think we'll still end up better off. It won't be as significant as what we've been told, but I do think we'll be better off. But it's if you look short term as well, because for us, like the Crew game on a Monday night at 8 o'clock, that killed a lot of younger fans coming to the game. 8 o'clock school night, and it's on TV. So when we're doing a lot at the moment around supportive engagement, how we can get families to connect to the club, come to the club, and that does start from 12:30 on a Saturday afternoon, where you use your mascot, you're getting them in the fan zone. We get lots of activities going on. You can build a rapport with Port Vale that isn't just about winning a game of football. Monday night at 8 o'clock, people are rushing round. They have the tea at home. They don't come in. No one comes as early. There's all those other bits, which means for us, longer term, we might lose that younger fan that would have been connected to the club because of the Saturday 3 o'clock.
Can I ask? I'm really interested to have this part of the discussion around the finances of the club when you are relegated. Mm-hmm. So last season, you're working on a budget that is dependent on revenues you're able to drive through participation in League One. You then get relegated down to League Two. You make less money, therefore you probably have to adapt. Mm-hmm. How is the impact of that felt in a club when you lose some of that revenue?
Well, again, the first conversation that we had really once we were relegated, and we'd already the signs were there already, that we were the likelihood of us being relegated with a few games to go, to be fair. So we were already starting to look at the numbers, looking what it meant, and as I said, before we got this conversation going, I think that we were already planning on a real reset of the football club. But what the conversation at the end of the season lent itself to, and this goes back to good owners again, and why football at the moment is in not a precarious position, but there's a lot of work to be done on sustainability of clubs, because Carol and Kevin, they knew, accepted, understand it. Well, not accepted, but understood for Port Vale to compete in League Two next season, to make sure that we could have the club with the right values and the principles that Carol and Kevin want into the football club. They would have to put a little bit more money into. So in terms of covering what was lost from our League One revenue, and that is really only the 12% to the 8%, and so that's what we've lost, because I think commercially season tickets have actually gone up, which has been amazing for us. Our sponsorship is there or thereabouts. So do
you have a clause in a contract with a sponsor where if you get relegated, the
drops down? We do, but what we found last year, majority of them quite a lot of them are local, and they all were more than happy without even us asking to continue at the same level, which was great for us. And that again is testament to the way that we do want to work with sponsors. We don't really use the word sponsor. I've used the word commercial quite a lot in here, but we never really use the word commercial at the club.
When you talk about partner?
Yeah, it's partnerships and it's relationships. And then, because the club never has, because of where the club was in 2019, and it's not until now, I don't think we felt, and I've been here 2 years, near enough 2 years now, we haven't felt like we knew what we wanted to be as a football club. So summer we reset our purpose, set clear objectives for the club, where we want to be 12 months, but where we want to be in sort of 3 to 5 years' time. And that does include ways of how we're going to increase our revenue, how we are going to connect to the community, how we are going to build a supporter base. But these things
What are the
take
biggest
time.
ways you would like to increase your revenue that you do not have today?
Match day attendance, for one. We have to, and I think the club's big enough where we're going to have a drive, and we haven't communicated this yet, but we're going to have a real drive around 10,000 supporters at a home game. We had first time since 2023, which was another big game, but Crew on the Monday night, which was on TV, we got over 10,000 supporters, which was brilliant. We've got Walsall tomorrow, and we know we'll be over 10,000 again for Walsall. So it's because if we can continue to get 10,000 supporters in the stadium, that will have a significant impact on our revenue.
If you're in charge of the EFL for like a day and you're like, okay, how do we increase the sustainability of football teams away from owner-led funding to sustainable entities in their own rights, what would you change or do?
I'd restrict some of the funds that football clubs do get in terms of ensure that funding that's received has to be spent on, well, can't be spent on player salaries ultimately, because what happens at the moment, being frank, we get money comes into football from various different ways, and I feel, and this is where, without boring you to death, all the, the fan-led review, which I'm sure you've spoken about before and everything, where I'm really hoping some of that can help drive some of the change around money coming into football, that then all that happens is it just inflates players' salaries that are in the same pool of players. So the same pool of players end up getting, more money, and ultimately, as clubs, if you want to, and you want to compete at the top end of the table, of course, everyone has a choice. But we knew this season, for us to be at top end of League Two, we've got to give Darren Moore, the manager, a top end of League Two budget. And if that means that we're paying a premium for a player that last season was on X amount per week, and now we have to pay that player an extra bit just to make sure that we are able to win more football games, and that's what I change. Part of the money that comes in, so I believe football as a whole duty around equality, diversity, inclusion, around the environment, around making clubs sustainable for their communities, making a difference to making stadiums safe, compliant, fun for families to come and get involved in. That money shouldn't just get siphoned off and just go into a pool of football players.
In League Two, what are the types of salaries that a player gets? Are we talking $100,000 a year?
Sensitively, I think it can be anything. You're not talking life-changing money. You're definitely not talking life-changing money at League Two, League One, but you definitely, the number that you just said there isn't too far away from what I'd say is an average salary in League Two, league bottom end of League One.
Yeah.
I would have
What
thought.
number did you say?
$100,000 a year.
$100,000 a year. Okay.
Ish.
And then you have how many players in the squad?
24.
Yeah,
You're
24
spending like
to
3
20.
million a year basically on salaries.
Good numbers.
Well, I'm thinking there's going to be some who've paid a little bit more, some a little bit less.
Yeah, but there is, so that's player salaries, but there's a load more that go into player agents, bonuses, all the other sort of costs associated to that first
What
team
is
player.
like player budget then? Is that 6 million of the 12?
No, it's a little bit less for us, but I'd say we're between 4 and 5 million.
How involved is someone like Darren Moore? You got a great manager in. How involved is he working with you on the budget side when looking at building the squad from the business perspective, as well as obviously turning around and saying, I would like to have that player, please? Yeah, no,
he's great. And so we made a decision in the summer not to appoint a director of football. So we, as the whole reset of the club was going on, part of the reason that we wanted to restructure the leadership team and the way that we're working was because we had Darren Moore as our manager, especially once we knew we were in League Two, because it was, Darren's got the experience. He's been a loan manager. He's been a 21s. He's worked at Premier League clubs. He's obviously played the game, but he's got the contacts, the knowledge, and the understanding of how a football club can operate from a football point of view. So Darren really led and drove the recruitment of the team. So we did completely Darren's players, and Darren knew the budget from day one as well. And working with him on that and the team that we've built around him from a recruitment analysis and everything else has been, key to building the team that we've got this season. And especially again, I don't know if it is true, especially in League Two. So I think this is just the thing throughout football. Players still, they come to a club, a lot of them, because of the manager. And yes, once they're at the club, it's how we then integrate them into the football club and get them to understand the importance of playing for Port Vale, what it means to the the local community, its supporters, and what a great club it is. But a lot of the players this summer wanted to come and take the opportunity in the project at Port Vale because Darren Moore was our manager. And I think that's a really important thing for me, that we've got a manager that does understand like club values again. He's always described, everyone I always speak to says Darren Moore, nicest guy in football, nicest guy in football. And he is a really nice guy. But I think there's a bit which we want. There's an edge to him as well, and there's a winner right, not even deep inside him. It's right at the tip of everything that he does. He wants to win, and I think that's the culture that we want. We want a high performing culture with really good people, and that but not nice people. We don't want to be known as a nice football club. We want to be known as a high performing club that's got good people inside it.
Where else do we spend money then? If we've got 4 to 5 on players, where else is the 12 going?
We have a lot of staff. We have a thriving academy. So our academy is doing really well. But we get a proportion of funding through Premier League, FA for the academy. But
is it a Cat 1 academy or is
it's Cat 3? Cat 3. But our academy costs us, so it's over £1 million, and we get.
Wow. Do you measure success of that with player transfers, with transfer money coming in? How do you measure the success?
Yeah, well, minutes on pitch. So we've done really well over recent years with young players coming through our academy system and into the first team, which obviously should mean that there's a really good return on that from being in the squad and the salaries that younger players are on, especially initially, as they're getting the experience and everything in comparison to signing an experienced pro or whatever. So that, and then yes, that's selling players. So we've sold players over the just since I've been here, the last couple of years to Newcastle United, to Aston Villa, to Southampton.
What was the biggest sale?
So we've Bailey Di Pepper in the summer. So Bailey Di Pepper, who was at the club from under 9. He's local, lovely lad, lovely family, playing a good amount of first team football.
How much did we vlog him for?
So he went to Southampton, close to 7 figures, with plenty of add-ons, and if he does well, we do well, which is obviously the way to try and build things, which is good. We know where we sit within football as well. Port Vale, we've got a good academy. Well, a really good academy that's developing players, but equally when when opportunities come calling from, the Premier League, the Championship, or whatever, we know if that's the right decision for that young lad in their family, then we'd never ever stand in the way of that.
What's it like? You've gone through, that low of the relegation. You're now, and it's worth saying, we've just speaking about it going down. You're now top of the league, right? And the culture around that club now is suddenly probably one of positivity because you're winning games. How does that actually change your job and what you're looking to do as you're planning ahead? You've got all this business going on. You're looking at what you can do as a club to develop and be better. But it does, I guess, always come back to the league that you sit in. Yeah, it does. And it's difficult because part of what I see as my role anyway is to just keep the momentum and keep people improving. And that's... We're top of the league, and I say this to staff all the time, but that is it's a small part of what the club is trying to achieve. Again, we want to win football games, but there's so much that's going on at the football club that if the media department, the finance department, our people department, whatever, they start to think success is measured by 3 points on a Saturday and being top of the league, we're going to go wrong, because yes, we can influence that by the culture that we have around the place and the how we're setting up to the first team to do as well as they can. But ultimately, once the referee blows a whistle, we have no control over those 11 blokes on the pitch trying to win a football game. So I do see my job as making sure that we stay pretty level at all times. I'm not someone that gets too high or too low anyway, and I didn't. Even last year we got relegated. Of course, was I bothered? Of course I was bothered, but I knew I backed us to keep. I knew we were going in the right direction. I knew that if we just kept delivering and kept changing some of the things that we needed to change, once things started to settle, I knew the club would be fine. For so many different reasons, and now that we are top of League Two, it's equally important not to think that
the job's done, or to get overexcited, or to think that, you know, I'm not any better at my job now than what I was, in my opinion, like 6 months ago when we got relegated. It's just, we happened to get relegated, and don't get me wrong, I never want to go through it again, but that is football. You win games, you lose games, and it's going to happen forever and a day.
Do you get nervous spending money on things that aren't visible on the pitch at 3 p.m. on a Saturday? We had Cambridge on. They'd spent a lot of money on a rebrand. They've got stadium. They've done hospitality. Really great spend in developing infrastructure around the club. But obviously, fans will always look at performance, and when they're at the bottom of the league spending that money, they get upset. Do you get nervous?
Yeah, well, I've actually spoke to Alex about this ages ago, because they have got a different group of fans than we've got in terms of, you know, how vocal they can be and what they want to see out of their football club. However, how
are they different?
So it just goes back to, I think, you know, the club. So our club, 1876. There's almost an expectation that goes back again to the two clubs in the city. There's a lot. Port Vale fans expect us to be competing with Stoke City, and Stoke City have had Premier League days. They've had a lot of success, not over recent years. So, and I think because of that real local rivalry, and just the way that our, you know, Cambridge is completely different to Stoke-on-Trent. The types of, you know, the people, the way that they've been brought up, the history, the heritage, it's just different. And I think what we've got now with... I
would imagine your fans are much more vocal.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, vocal. I'm hot on the sleeve. You know, if they don't like something, we know about it. But the issue that we had, going back to your question, I suppose, is when we were losing games, we stopped communicating. We sort of started to hide because, and this was my observations at that point anyway, and when we reviewed things at the end of the season, and once I knew I could, I suppose, have that influence over things, we had to become more open and honest with supporters. We've just had the groundsman shed. So the groundsman shed, we've got a really old stadium. Groundsman shed, loads of movement in it. So someone's come out, structural engineers come out, had a look at it. It's going to go at any point. So we've got to demolish it. But it's going to cost over 50 grand. So that's 50 grand that has to be found from somewhere. But previously, those hidden things, like we spent 250 grand on new PA system for the ground. We've spent 60 odd grand on new toilets in one of the stands. These things that when it starts adding up, you're like, shit.
250 grand for a PA system.
Yeah, it's good.
It better be.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, the stadium, again, going back to 2019, the stadium had no love for 20 years. If you would have come to the stadium in, 2015-ish to come into the stadium now, the stadium, it's still an old stadium, but it is modern, it's fresh. There's been a lot of money spent around the ground. The Wi-Fi still isn't great, but the Wi-Fi was terrible. The connectivity between like the store and the ground and Sky and all this stuff was terrible. But all that, as soon as you start putting any price on it, you're talking thousands straight away. But the fans weren't, none of our supporters were aware of any of this spend, but we tell them now. So it's been much more open and honest with them, because it is about, them understanding that the club isn't just, the club can quite quickly spend money, but that money has to come from somewhere.
Do you have to be careful not to make decisions based on fan sentiment?
100%. That is and being honest with that as well. So we've just literally last week announced our first supporter advisory board. So it's important to listen to the supporters, and that's again a criticism that was labelled at us over the last couple of years, that we didn't do enough listening, which we've accepted. So listening to the supporters, consulting the supporters, really important. But supporters making decisions is where there has to be a real balance. So them helping us to come up with where we need to be prioritising, I have no issue with, but basing decisions on emotion and basing decisions on, listening to supporters that don't have all the facts, that don't know the ins and outs of a football club, that don't know how the business operates, is something that I don't believe, and we won't do. We can't do, because that's where
would supporters' demands / expectations / aspirations be misaligned with those of the business?
The examples I've just said about spending money on toilets, on different things, they will actually no, just put another 200k on top of a centre forward, which could be an argument from a supporter. Or we've got part of the grounds closed at the moment, so we've got 2 parts of the ground closed at the moment. If you talk to supporters, they want to see a ground fully open, because the ground should be fully open for anyone. You can sit anywhere, but then we've got suddenly we've already got 16,000 seats, which we're not, on a usual match day, we're not even half selling. So to open more of the ground in terms of cost, in terms of how that's operationally ran, just wouldn't work for the football club financially more than anything. Whereas the supporters would want to see the whole 4 sides of the ground and every bit within it open. So there's, I guess, another example. And kit designs and all of that other stuff, which we want to be, supporters have influence, but again, we have to think commercially as well. Are those things going to sell? Ticket pricing is another one where we've had, supporters would, I'm sure, as we'd like to, either reduce ticket pricing or freeze ticket pricing for the next 10 years because of the, how tough it is at the moment. But again, for us as a football club, our costs have gone, up and up and up, and we have to find ways of making sure that we're, reducing that as ourselves as well.
What's the cost of a ticket at the moment? I want to come on a Saturday.
For an adult, it's 26 quid. We do for if you're coming with an under 12, it's a paying adult. It's free in the family area. So under 12s are free. It's a pound. So it's it's a pound in other areas of the ground. So yeah, and then concessions, I think they're anything between 10 and 20 quid.
This is an important bit to tie into, I think, the supporter conversation. I wanted to focus a little bit more on it rather than tie it into the media piece. And it's the discussion that's been had recently, and also the general importance of the 3 p.m. blackout. Just before we give any of our opinions, I know we've had a few conversations around it. I'm really interested for you as CEO of a lower league club on whether that is a really important thing to still exist. And if it is, why? What's the impact on the club of having the 3 p.m. blackout?
I have a strong feeling on live sport just in general. So I do have a strong belief that, going back to why I got involved in the first place, sport, it builds relationships. All my friends are from sport. All my connections are through sport, and I would never have got that from sitting behind the TV and watching sport, and that's a fact. So I think we have to protect, and clubs have to make sure that they are using the match day as an opportunity for people to come together. And I do think society in general needs people to come together. There isn't enough opportunities where we do connect, and without getting too deep, those relationships and being social and meeting with different people with different views and different opinions, it is important. And I do think protecting that is something that we should do.
Do you think removing the 3 p.m. blackout, broadcast, and just to be clear for everyone, that means broadcasting all football basically, do you think that you would lose fans then if Premier League, let's say every Premier League game was available, people who support the club would maybe either watch at home or watch another club?
Yeah, I think we would. Yeah, I think we would. I do. I think people do consume the sport and everything differently anyway now. So and I believe in options, but I do.
But did you not say earlier when you had 10,000 and these great record attendances, and then and they were on TV too? And at the time, I was thinking, well, clearly it's not impacting the attendance.
Yeah, but I think so. Crew, we got just over 10,000 for Crew. I think we would have got 11 to 12,000 for the Crew game. So we can track obviously our season ticket holders. So of our younger supporters, well less than half of them came to the Crew game.
Was that not because it was the evening though?
Yeah.
So it's not the blackout. It's just the evening element that's the problem.
Potentially.
So it's not the element of like attendance in real life. It's just the timing.
But then I suppose on that Monday night there wasn't any other football really available. There wasn't any, there wasn't 10 Premier League games to pick from, or there wasn't all the other the 72 teams playing across the EFL. So it's a difficult one to say for definite. But
is the 3 p.m. blackout a bit of a safety blanket for lower league clubs? Would it force you as a club, if you didn't have this, to maybe think of different ways to engage your community? Because they can. But is it? Because if you did take it away, right, and you would have extra motivation and pressures to really capture that fan base, to make sure they didn't go and support Stoke if they're in a Premier League, in your local area, or whatever is the nearest team that is competing.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. It's going back to the Crew game. We marketed the Crew game a hell of a lot more and a hell of a lot differently because we knew we needed to, I guess.
How did you market it differently?
So we really focused on, it's great being on TV, but there's nothing beats being there live. So actually really going at being part of the atmosphere, being part of, we had a drive on it being our biggest attendance of the season. So we were like, being one of the, however many are going to be there to top our attendance league table of the season and things like that. So so your point is valid. Where would it sort of force the hand of clubs to be more creative, think differently, and connect to communities in a different way in the supporters? Potentially. Are we ready for that now? And do we need to do that now? Is a different question, I guess.
Do you have discussions as like a league group of CEOs? I know obviously you have a representative, I think, on League Two on the EFL board. But do you as a group of chief executives have discussions about this, about the things, the wider market forces that influence the success of clubs at your level? Yeah,
there's regularly really. I'm not a massive fan of online and like Teams meetings and things. I find them difficult to, like what we're doing now, engage in real like chat and talk, because you can't really get a flavour for how someone's really feeling, or if if they do feel as strongly as what it's coming across and all those things. So and that's how we tend to meet at the moment. There's regular catch-ups over certain topics, and obviously at the moment the fan-led review and everything, and there's stuff going around finance and football, which we are meeting as a group. And Charles Grant, who's our League Two rep from Crew, he's great. So he'll often just message and say, have you got any concerns, any questions, those sorts of things. And in general, the consensus is football does need to look at itself as well, and not just remain how it's always been, because again, things have changed throughout football.
Do you think owners and CEOs should be much more public in terms of their, bluntly, explanations around why they do what they do, how they do what they do, the spending?
Yeah, I do. It's like even today, it's like, and Carol, our owner, she's very open and honest, and she's been bitten a few times, and that it hasn't been nice for Carol last year when she's as I've said a number of times, like local owner, putting in a decent chunk of money, which it definitely isn't an investment. It's gonna, it's not money that I don't think she's ever going to get back. And she ended up really close to selling the club, or thinking about selling the club.
Why?
Last year, because of how much abuse she was getting online, the comments she was getting around how the club, because of, due to relegation and everything. And Carol was always so honest about the decisions that were being made and mistakes that were being made, importantly. She's always really honest about it. And I think that's why, listening to, I'm talking to other CEOs and things at the moment about some of the online hate stuff and everything. And people think it's clubs being secretive over numbers and clubs being secretive over, the competitive edge that it might give someone else. I think it's a lot to do with supporters, and it's actually giving away too much opens you up to, criticism when things don't go too well. So an example is me saying things that, I've said around like the budget and everything else. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, if we don't get promoted this year, and I've told you that we've got a top end player budget in League Two, that will come back to bite me massively on the arse come the end of the season, because fans will be bang straight on it.
That's really interesting though, because we always look at it, don't we, as people who now, particularly in football, are communicating, are really improving their position. They're building better understandings. That's what the fans want, and maybe the fans then, and whether if they don't even agree with it, at least they'll understand the process.
Yeah.
But actually, what you're saying is it can come back and cause more
and it's
issues.
not to say we shouldn't do it, because we're going to, we want to be open and transparent as much as we can, and we'll continue to do that. So it's not about stopping any of it or closing down at all, because we won't. But it is, one of my learnings definitely. So in January when I got given this role, I was convinced I could change everyone's mind about Port Vale, about the way that we do things, about what a successful club should look like on and off the pitch. And the reality is, there is a proportion of fans, and I think this is in any club, that literally don't care what's going on anywhere else. But, they like to know there's a bit of community stuff going on. They like to know the academy's doing okay, but they literally don't care about anything other than winning a football game. And I wanted it to be more than that with every single Vale fan. And that's my learning. I've got to accept and understand that people do want the football club for different reasons. And
do you have a women's team?
Yeah.
How much does that cost?
Not a great deal, in all fairness. It's something that we're looking at. So they're at step 5 in the pyramid. Went unbeaten last year. Got promoted. It's something that we're starting to drive. It'll cost. So the players don't get paid in the women's team, and it'll cost us about 90 grand maybe to run the team, 90 to 100 grand to run the team over a season.
Wow.
So but that's something that we're naturally with a female owner and everything as well. Carol has got a passion for trying to really grow and develop our women and girl offer, and so that is part of the plan for the next kind of 3 to 5 years anyway.
Okay, 90 grand.
90 grand is
small budget.
Yeah. But also, as we've discussed on the show quite often, it has to be a small budget to make it feasible, because when it costs too much and the money doesn't return, it's a real issue for clubs. As just a business
Can
proposition.
women's football be a sustainable business in its own right and non-obligation for club owners to pay because it makes them look less bad?
You can remove your hand from your eyes.
No, because if I have that, then I didn't say that.
They can still see you.
No, they can't.
At the moment, no. If in short, I think at the women's game is without growing, and the opportunity for women. I've got 3 girls myself, and if they wanted to play football, they could play football. Like there's opportunities everywhere now. But in terms of it being, commercially viable for a football club, especially in lower leagues, it's we've done some numbers, and if we continue to grow as we want to, or as Carol wants us to, it's going to cost us about another £500,000 to really get it to where it needs to. And is the commercial? Are we going to get £500,000 back in return?
Well, can you remember what Charlie Mathern said his was? Was it $1 million and a half?
Yeah, I think
something like that.
I think it was. Yeah. But they were higher up,
and they wanted to get rid of it.
Well, no, yeah, I think he's just saying it's a serious discussion, right? Because
absolutely,
in a business where it doesn't generate anything and it's costing a huge amount, and you were in League One, you don't have the luxury of spending loads of cash in areas that don't make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Remove the sentimentality. Just look at it literally from a business.
It's what's right, but then at the same time, you've comes back to who pays for it.
I was going to say also, if you've got Carol who's really passionate about this and going, do you know what? I understand, but it's my money, and I'm really confident that this is something the club should have, then she can fund it, and that's a decision that I guess she'll make, rather than it being a huge cost that someone else has to pick up. It
is, but then again that leans to, and Port Vale fine, but my worry for football in general is that reliance on owner funding, because we're in a good spot at the moment, but who knows, in 5 years or whatever, Carol and Kevin might go, actually, that's us done. What's then next with Port Vale? If there's been, the women's team's been funded by, the Shanahans to a tune of whatever that is, the club is reliant on owner funding. If that suddenly goes, what becomes of Port Vale, and that is the worry for football.
Tell us about Robbie Williams in a time where we look for these unique angles outside of sport to help build brand. And
so Robbie Williams is one of the 2 presidents at Port Vale. So Carol made him one of our vice presidents on last season at some point when he was last over. So he's a massive huge Port Vale fan. Robbie Williams house literally just round the corner from the ground. So whenever he's in the UK, he comes to a game. So Robbie's a huge advocate for Vale, but I think Robbie's a good example of it. He's a supporter that he's fell back in love with Port Vale in terms of the club because of the ownership and the way that the club is ran now. He'd lost a lot of connection and everything from Port Vale because of the lack of love and everything from previous owners and the way that the club was pre-2019, and bringing Robbie back in. Of course, it gives us, huge opportunities. But one thing, it's been agreed is that we won't. Robbie likes coming to Port Vale as a Port Vale fan.
Yeah.
Robbie there isn't any appetite either side to try and get Robbie to, part own the club, put money into the club. To do it, what Robbie does for us is can raise profile. He did a concert at Vale Park a couple of years ago, which again, getting 22,000 people on. Yeah. At Vale Park, for Robbie Williams concert, amazing. And he launched our kit, so he come on.
That's pretty cool.
Exactly. So he walks on, he launches the kit, and we can send him if we have some new jumpers or a T-shirt or whatever it is, we can send it him, and he'll pop something on his Instagram, and without a shadow of a doubt, the sales of them go straight up.
But that's the value, isn't it, to you? You don't necessarily need the money that he could put into the club. You need the exposure and the unique brand that he has to give you a voice that stands out from a lot of the other teams.
It is, and he'll do message.
Take both, but
yeah, if he offered. But he does video messages for fans. He'll send stuff in for sponsors. It's the added value stuff when you've got a Robbie Williams that does make a bit of a difference.
I saw something that was really cool while I was doing some research, which is he did I think it was the 2000 or an early 2000 soundtrack or theme for one of the FIFAs. And part of the agreement that he struck with EA Sports was that Port Vale would be included in the game, because normally at that time they wouldn't have had teams low down, a bit like they did with Wrexham years ago. So Port Vale came into were playing in the game in, I think, the rest of the world category as part of the deal. I'd love them to actually validate if that was true, but because the value of that, being on a game in a situation like that is huge again for the club. A different way to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, massive. No, I didn't know that either. So great. And he is when you've been lucky enough to speak to him a couple of times, and he is he's a normal bloke from Burslem that wants to see his local club do well, and that's great for us. So
should we have a little play?
Yeah, let's do it.
So this is a new thing just for the people listening as well. If you're watching, it's quite easy to see. We basically have a number of questions that we actually don't know as well. They've been put together separately. The decisions that we can make are answer it, or if you don't want to answer it, we have afterwards a giveaway of something that we can share maybe with the fans. Okay. So we can choose a few of these as we go through. Shall I go for the first one? Okay.
You go first.
Oh, great. If you have to take one player from Stoke, who would you take?
Do you know, genuinely, I don't really know any of the Stoke players, and that's genuine. I would have taken Ryan Shawcross back in the day because he's a excellent centre half.
Okay, so that's you got out of that. Lightly.
Yeah, I've done all right there.
Yeah, I don't really know any. The fans will love that response, but who?
Yeah.
Would you scrap FA Cup replays?
Definitely not. I think FA Cup replays, one, financially, but secondly, just the magic of the cup and what it does, and again for lower league clubs, like incredible.
Because they're a challenge for the calendar for the bigger clubs, right? Who play in lots of competitions, and that's where the conversation comes from. But actually, of interest to you and the value of them, I mean, they're probably an integral part.
They are, and if you can draw, if you can get 2 games against a Liverpool, a Man United, whoever, then you can significantly eat into that, you know, the losses that we've been talking about before quite quickly. And for supporters, our supporters getting the opportunity to go to Anfield, to go to Old Trafford, it doesn't happen very often, if ever. So getting that opportunity is priceless, really.
You're given £1 million today. Do you get a new striker or two, or give everyone a pay rise?
Well, I think we're going to get... I'm backing the players this year, and I'd love to give the staff pay rises, so I'm giving pay rises for staff.
What don't your fans understand about football? I think you may want to give out a shirt here.
Our fans know everything about football. An answer like that or no? Is that an answer, or was that I've got to give a signed shirt or something?
Do you want to answer it, or do you want to give a signed?
I'll answer as I answered it, so you can say if that's an answer or not.
That's not an answer.
No.
What was the biggest waste of money that you've spent on since being at Port Vale?
This will be a bit controversial, but the biggest waste of money was the programme. And we got rid of it.
The program,
the matchday program.
Matchday program, yeah. It was matchday program was costing us $30,000 a year, and we got rid of it this season, and we haven't got it, which was a little bit controversial with supporters, but we were losing.
They hated losing the program.
A lot of our older fans and fans that come for, collect programs and all of that sort of. That
do they not pay for the program?
Yeah, but we had a minimum orders, production and print, people doing it, resource. We were nowhere. We were losing $30,000 a year, and that was from 2021, $30,000 a season.
Wow.
So because once no one had done the numbers, we did the numbers, and it was like, what are we still continuing with this for? When that money can be obviously a lot, and we were doing it because of supporters and. We were selling, on average, about 120 at a game.
120?
120. And once we told the supporters that, more understood, because that goes back to being honest with them. And some still didn't like it, but they did understand, which like, well, we asked so many people, went to the supporters club meeting, and they were all going, like, I can't get rid of the programme. And I went round and said, did you buy the programme? No. Did you buy the programme? No. Did you buy? So they all wanted the programme, but no one was buying the thing anyway. It was just having the concept of the programme they didn't want to lose.
120 is abysmal.
Yeah. Finally, this isn't an issue for you because you're doing great, but in football, I guess it could be any league, which manager, if you were CEO of a club, would you have fired already this season?
Oh, God. No, none. No, but genuinely, I think, of course, people don't perform well, do they, in jobs? Like, I have some really bad days. I'm sure you two do, maybe. But I do think the whole not the hire and fire in football, but I just don't agree with if someone was your man, I know your woman at the start of the season. So this is like August the 1st, and that person is now sort of 2 or 3 months you're down the track, and they're no longer that person, and they need to be sacked and fired. And I just think...
We should probably sack yourself as well, shouldn't you? Because you've made that decision.
Exactly.
Like, all jokes aside,
a massive problem with your recruitment, for one.
Leicester Steve Cooper, right? They haven't given him... It's their fault for appointing him. If they didn't like him, they sack him after this amount of time. Probably the same for West Ham and someone like that.
Yeah, exactly. And that whole bit around the recruitment, but also like too many football... And this is where, again, whether we're different or not, I don't know, but we've looked at Darren. I'm not saying Darren's going to be here forever because everyone has a life cycle at a football club, everyone anyway. But we as a club are there to support Darren to be the best version of him, so to develop him, to make him better, to get him the best team. Too many, in my opinion, clubs will go, right, managers in, it's the manager's responsibility to win football games, nobody else's. And if he wins, great, and if he loses, we'll sack him and we'll get the next one. And I just don't think that is the way the world should work, let alone football. And it's too easy just to go, there's a bit of a problem, let's fix it by sacking someone and bringing someone else in, because I don't think it doesn't necessarily fix the problem that you've got. Problem may be the way that you're recruiting the team around them, the club culture and everything else, not necessarily. So if you feel we felt Darren's the right man, halfway through, a little bit more halfway through last season, he's and coming into this season, and it's easy to say I get because we're top of the league at the moment, but how does that change so drastically so quickly? So no one.
Matt, we really appreciate it. It's been so great doing this. Thank you for coming on.
No problem. Thank you.